Thank you, Chair. A report of the Auditor General on the County Executive of Busia for the year ended 30th June 2022. Chair, this audit attracted a qualified opinion. And Chair, the issues that gave rise to the opinion of variances in financial statements, still variances in financial statements up to number 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Chair, number 2 is on unsupported expenditure.
Okay, maybe let's just go through each issues, issue by issue.
Yes.
Let's start from accuracy of the financial statements. And maybe even though you had marked 1.1 as resolved,
yes,
I just want us to look at it, because how it is resolved will determine how we deal with the other issues that come after it. So read your finding on 1.1.
1.1, Chair, is variances between statement of receipt and payment and supporting schedules. It reads, Chair, the statement of receipt and payments reflects amounts under components which were at variance with the corresponding amount shown in supporting schedules as shown below. Chair, there is a table with 5 components, where the figures, first column is figures in the financial statements, the next column is figures in supporting schedules, and the last column, Chair, is on the variances that we are noted between the 2 columns. The net effect, Chair, is 768,783,426. Thank you, Chair.
Now, since we had already looked at a brief and had a glance at the management response, the Governor, you agree with the finding of the Auditor General?
Yes.
As at the time of audit?
Yes.
That as at the time of audit, 768 million could not be supported. But then it has now been supported. So the question is, what magic was that? What magic did you apply to support the 768 million when it was not possible at the time of audit?
Chair, I think I was going to ask my CC Finance to be responding on my behalf, and I'll interject when there are issues that I can do. If
We'll allow her to respond.
Yes.
But we'll still come back to that question.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Management response. A, exchequer releases. It is true the amount on the financial statements for exchequer releases was Kenya shillings 6,843,285,237. However, schedules amounting to Kenya shillings 6,482,491,132 were availed to the auditors, leaving a balance of Kenya shillings 360,790,105, which were later availed for verification. Thus, the amount in the supporting schedules tally with the amount reflected in the financial statements. When you look at Appendix 1A, is the extract of financial statements, page 26, showing the total exchequer releases for the financial year 2021-2022, supporting schedules and extract of bank statement. B, other receipts. The management hereby clarifies that the variances of Kenya shillings 527,289 was unspent amount for financial year 2020-2021 returned to CRF account recognized as part of other receipts. Appendix 1B is the extract of bank statement showing refund of unspent funds at the end of the financial year. Appendix 1C is extract of other receipts for financial year 2021-2022 showing inclusion of unspent amount returned to CRF. And we go to E, other grants and payments dash Kenya Climate Smart Support. It is true the amount on the financial statements for other grants and payments was Kenya shillings 159,943,544. However, schedules amounting to Kenya shillings 62,245,960 were availed to auditors, leaving a balance of Kenya shillings 97,697,584, which were later availed for verification. Thus, the amount in supporting schedules tally with amount reflected in financial statements. Appendix 1D is schedules of other grants and payments amounting to Kenya shillings 159,943,544. D, use of goods and services, other operating expenses. It is true the amount on the financial statements for other operating expenses was Kenya shillings 570,897,952, which comprised various sub-items under that vote head. However, the supporting schedules at the time of audit of Kenya shillings 279,855,056 were part payments made under sub-items in that vote head, excluding amount of 291,042,896. That resulted to the variances which have since been availed for verification. And that can be seen in Appendix 1E, which is schedule of other operating expenses amounting to Kenya shillings 570,897,952. Then we go to E, other payments. It is true the amount on the financial statements for other payment was Kenya shillings 774,694,873. However, schedules amounting to Kenya shillings 755,973,321 were availed to the auditor at the time of audit. The balance of Kenya shillings 18,721,552 was later availed for verification. Thus, the supporting schedules tally with the amount reflected in the financial statements. It's in Appendix F of schedule of other payment amounting to Kenya shillings 774,694,873.
Auditor General, what is your take on that explanation?
Thank you, Chair. We have gone through the schedules and confirmed them against supporting documents, underlying documents. The issue, Chair, here is late submission of supporting documents, which if we go through almost 1/4 of this report, that is the trend that was existing at that time. So,
yeah, and then I think that's why we get back to the question.
yes, Chair.
Because what your CC has read essentially agrees with the observation of the Auditor General. And the theme that cuts across all the responses, that they were later availed for verification. And yet audit is not a one-day thing. It is not an event, it's a process. So what magic is this that produced the records later and could not produce them at the time of audit?
Thank you, Chair, because that's also a question I kept on asking my team, that this thing is not a one-off thing. You are given opportunity to avail records and you are not availed. But it also came to my attention that there was no proper system of keeping some of these records. And you will find on financial matters, when you see that kind of thing, your first issue is your antennas are up. And so the most important thing now is to say we must have a proper system of keeping these records, because these records is about money. And this is one thing that we found, a big problem that we're trying now to correct, because if the auditor asks you at that time, why are you not availing, where are you going to get it? Those are the questions that we have been asking. Why didn't you avail? You are given opportunity to either avail them even if they have been there. But it seems in this case, Chair, it did not happen. And we are trying now to put a records management system in place so that everything is real time when it is required. But unfortunately, that was the situation.
So the governor is as baffled as the chair. So we don't seem to be getting answers. Senator Dulo?
Chair, I think what I wanted to ask are partly answered by the governor. And since he has said he has put the structures in place to make sure that there is accountability in future as far as documents are concerned, hoping that that is the position, then I think in future maybe a similar situation should not arise. Because a layperson can say that if the documents were not found at the time of audit and now they are veiled, they can say they are cooked, you know. So I hope since he has put the structures in place, then we can go by that. I thank you.
Senator Nyonka?
Chair, my question goes to the AOG. After the presentation of the documents and your receipt of those documents, were you comfortable that what you received was actually genuine and they were verifiable and nobody can impute any motive or questions about them?
That is true, Chair, and that's why we said we are satisfied, because we could take the schedule, go back to the payment vouchers, and then those payment vouchers look at the supporting documents of those payment vouchers, so that at the end of the day, if there is one that we are not satisfied with, then we flag it out. And Chair, you may recall during our pre-briefing, there was the issue of 276 million that came up, and we said, although we have been given payment vouchers for 276, we have not been able to ascertain all of them, confirm all of them. We have gone to the extent of only 138 million. The rest, we could seek the indulgence of the committee so that we continue verifying them with time and slowly, so that we are not able to make a mistake. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Omtata?
Thank you, Chair. I would only want to point His Excellency to the fact that the absence of public records is a gross violation of the law, especially the Public Finance Act. We have Section 149, Clause 1 and Clause 2, paragraphs B and C. And if you look at the regulations, the management regulations, Regulation 102 and 117, Clause 3, of the Public Finance Management Regulations, National Government 2015, you find that there's a mandatory requirement on the officer handling documents to preserve them. And if you look at in this situation, we're not talking about peanuts. We're talking of millions of shillings in hundreds or in tens of millions. I would request Your Excellency, if you go, when you go back home, try to identify who was the officer responsible for these documents and take administrative action. Because if you don't do that, this mischief will continue. Because it really baffles me where I sit. I cannot accept that these documents are genuine. By the spread of the imagination, these are about 4 years back. Then you now pop up a document after somebody has looked for them and you say you are popping up in the 5th year. It looks a bit mischievous, but to let it go, I would request that you read the Riot Act to these people. The law provides that they must provide this, they must have safe custody of documents. And whoever was responsible for this document, if he is still on duty, then he needs to give you a very, very proper explanation as to why he hid the documents from the Auditor General, because if they were there, then they were deliberately hidden. If they are not there, then there's no way they can exist now. So there's some mischief that has been played, and Your Excellency, I would request that you crack the whip on the individual so that we don't have to waste your time asking you about where ledgers are and what have you. So that's all, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Maybe just going back to the records before us, and Auditor General, if you look at Appendix 1F, Schedule of Other Payments, because other payments is where clever accountants hide expenditure. But this schedule that we have, if you go to the second page, there's an entry of 3rd of June 2022. I think description is pre-feasibility, feasibility, and appraisal studies. Now, that pre-feasibility, feasibility, and appraisal studies runs on page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. So you've got 13 pages or 12 pages of pre-feasibility, feasibility, and appraisal studies. If you sum it up, it's in the tens of millions. So what is this? What is this feasibility and pre-feasibility, which has entries totaling to 12 pages, and if you are to do a rough sum, it would probably account for close to, it might get to 100 million. What is that? What is that? Because each page perhaps has, is it 30 rows? So there are almost 300 entries just with that one description. What could those be?
Chair, just like you said, that puzzle, but here what I got is that a lot of this is what we call these ward-based projects that were being budgeted under this kind of vote by them. And I've had a problem with this myself. The way, you know, these ward-based programs, the ones which are proposed by the members of the MCAs, the honorable MCAs of the wards. So, because if you look, you know, under the normal budgeting processes, these things should be done in departments. But somehow, you know, we found that there was this kind of arrangements, which I've been struggling with, to say, yes, projects can be proposed, but let the implementing agency be the departments, and you do the oversight role, because it becomes a problem. And these are some of the problems that we encountered there.
So Auditor General, you should also help us with that, because it's not just a matter of getting a schedule. You must also look at that schedule and figure out whether it makes sense. Is it a problem in their description? But if all these are truly feasibility and pre-feasibility studies, then there's a problem with this schedule. There's a problem with this as being support for the 774 million. Auditor, you told us that you looked at this, went back to the vouchers. Did this capture your attention?
Yes, it did, Chair. But the issue is that it was being budgeted at that time under yes. And then all the expenditure under that will fall under ward administrative, under directors of the wards.
But why are there other payments? Because if they are ward-based projects, there could be civil works, there could be public participation, there could be other operating costs. Why other payments, knowing the mischief that there is in that line?
Other payments.
Yes, actually that's other operating expenses. Chair, that is what we were also raising, because it should belong to a specific project. That specific project should have its own description. But what has been happening is that they were lumping them together under other operating expenses. All the projects, and that's why we were getting a problem with the management.
Senator Nyonka?
You know what, OAG, what you are saying, what I'm reading and taking from what you're saying, you seem to sound like even you don't actually know. Am I being fair to you?
We Chair, what we were saying is that it was the wrong description that time.
Thank you. So
Yes,
what,
has now
stop right there.
Thank you.
So once you noticed it was the wrong one, what red flags did you raise?
One issue, Chair, we have advised the current administration to desist from lumping all this expenditure under other expenses. That we have done. So that yes.
But now, Fred Abuga, it's not usually our nature to put you to task because you are our partner in this. But I think that even this county deserves to benefit from your experience, expertise, and advisory. This schedule for other payments, this schedule, I don't know whether it's your team who prepared it or you found it. Because this schedule, those entries on feasibility studies, whatever explanation it might be, they fall short. They fall short of a proper financial management system. And so it is easy for you to say that now we have a schedule totaling to 774. But you should also be telling us, but out of that 774, there are 300 entries that are suspicious. That maybe the committee should interrogate. And then that allows the governor also to be able to put his people on the spot. Because I think, Governor, during this time, you are not in the county. You are probably the privatization commission or somewhere. So perhaps your offense, if there was to be any, will be trying to cook the books. And that's what we need to be extremely careful about. So when I see a schedule like this, you know, it gives an impression that someone is trying to cook books, which you don't need to do because you're not the one in office. Governor.
Chair, the observations you're making are quite correct, and I really went through this thing, you know, when just like interrogating some of the questions that you are putting through. But as you put it, you know, this is just historical things that we were picking bits, because my question was that if this information is now available and the auditors had asked for it and it has taken us this long, are we sure, just the way you are saying, it raises your antennas? But then I was told, yes, we have submitted these documents, and I thought now it is the experts who can look through, tell us maybe this one we have verified, just like we are going through some issues with pending bills. You know, we have had to appoint committees, of course allowed by the Office of the Auditor General. So they have now to break down, because some places when they tell you that there is no record to even verify, there's a date but there's no record. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. And even for us, another bigger problem is where you sometimes go in and find money has been spent, but the projects are not usable, and you need to budget for them. Now, that brings a problem, because now how do you end and say, yes, public funds were used up to this extent, now we can go through the processes of making sure that we finish this project, because we have to finish some of those projects. If you look at them, they are really needed. But maybe the processes that we went through, you find there are no records. And for you to terminate even a contract and start another one, you must go through certain processes. So we are having a bit of those challenges. But even to me, this is helping me to reconstruct some of the decisions that we need to make. On like you go, a big culprit will be ECDs, waters, dispensary. You know, all these things we are calling ward-based programs. Because you find after these, sometimes they are not captured in the budgets. So it's only when you go there during public participation you hear, oh, you know, this thing was started, it was not completed, this kind of situation. But when the records are looked for the way, because I was asking that there was poor record management system. The things are picked from here and there. And as you put it, sometimes it can bring an issue. But once they are submitted, you expect they will be verified, then you'll be told this has satisfied us. Maybe this one you need to look a bit further. That's the way normally I take it. Because as you put it, I mean, you're talking of almost 3-4 years ago. So you can only get what is there because governments are perpetual.
Yeah, 3-4 years ago, 768 million later. Senator Omtata.
Yes, I think His Excellency just touched on a point I wanted to make, to ask the Auditor General. Did you trace this entries back to the budget? And if you look at the budgets of Busia County, including the current ones, there's a lot of other expenses. Have you looked at them to try and see whether this habit has changed or whether the habit is still continuing? Because from where I sit, this bad habit of others, and you find sometimes that the other expenses carry the bulk of the money in a department. So I don't know if you looked at the budgets of the time to trace these other expenses and maybe did a fraud audit to see if these things really have a pointer to this particular expense having been done fraudulently.
Could we get the Auditor General to respond, and then we come back to Senator Nyoka?
Thank you, Chair. We went to the budget, and the item of other operating expenses was budgeted for. What, Chair, we did not do is a forensic fraud audit. That we did not carry out, Chair.
Just to add on that, sorry, Chair, when you found the entry for other, and you are auditing this thing for lawfulness, and you know that in budget making, you must attach an expenditure to a service or a good. Don't you think at that point you should raise issues? Because I've noticed that the budgets for Busia for the current government have a lot of other things entered there. And they carry a lot of money. And when you're doing audit, I would expect you to declare that as an unlawful expenditure and not allow somebody to get away with that. Because if we don't tie budgets to programs or to specific procurements, then you'll not be able to know what is being done to the public money that is entrusted to fiduciary holders. So don't you think if you recover this was under budget as other, don't you think at that point you should have made a declaration that you have encountered an illegality?
Maybe let's get the Auditor General's response first, because I think that's been put to you. I think the critical thing, if you look at that other payments, it's 11% of equitable share. So that should be alarming. Having one entry called other payments with that percentage, I think that might even be almost the equivalent of what was transmitted to the Assembly. So we have a problem, and maybe this is going forward for you and your team, but for the Auditor General, they have a responsibility to point these out for past events, that any payment in the county government, it has to relate to something. And the chart of accounts that have been provided by the National Treasury has got sufficient granularity for you to be able to capture your payments either as a service or as a good or as a compensation to employees, so that if you're going to use that line of other payments, it should not be as material as 11%. And that's why you see even this schedule, it baffles you the same way it baffles me, because sometimes it's created to justify gaps. So Auditor General, what Senator Omtata is asking is, in terms of advisory, what is it that you have put to the county executive to ensure that this is not used to cover up fraud?
Thank you, Chair. Under the budgeting arrangement in the public service, Chair, is actually a program-based, meaning that every activity must be tied to a vote. If it's a project, it must drill down to the specific project, Chair, as a good practice, and see how the money has been allocated. As you rightfully said, when you charge other items and call them others, and you find the percentage is also high, that's also an area where you also need to raise a red flag, in the sense that there is a possibility of mischief when it's also under other expenditures. We have advised the county in terms of budget making process. Remember the CIDP and the annual development plan, that whatever program which is also coming into play must start from the people in terms of public participation, drill down into annual development plan. Then once you have that, you come up with the budget. Now once you have the budget, the budget must also be approved. Then once it's approved, you must also have a budget monitoring process, whereby you will also be seen whether you are living as per the budget, Chair. That we have again done, and we are keenly monitoring the implementation of the budget, Chair.
Governor, you wanted to say something?
Chair, before Governor talks.
Okay, Senator Maria.
Chair, if I take you back to query number D of uses of goods and services, Appendix 1E, the same applies, but there is some names. Yeah, I thought these names is the staffs, maybe in the impressed. Somebody were fuller.
If you look at the names,
Yes.
I think what she's saying